Ryu was a regular teenager who got hit by a truck and was reincarnated into a world full of magic. He got the ability to use water magic and only wanted to live a peaceful life by himself, but he soon becomes the strongest mage in the entire world without even realizing it. Ryu, a 15-year-old boy, suddenly finds himself in a strange white place, and as he wonders what is going on, a tall blonde guy arrives there, telling him that he is dead. Ryu suddenly remembers getting jumped by Truck Kun and asks the blonde dude if he is God. He replies that he is more like an angel who is here to send him to another world. Ryu can't believe that he gets to be Ice Guide, and the angel tells him that he can live as he wants in his next life. Well, Ryu is a chill guy and he just wants to live a slow and peaceful life. The angel has no problem with his choice, and he tells Ryu that the world he will be sent to has magic, and around 20% humans can cast spells. Ryu has talent for water magic, and the angel tells him that he will be dropped at a safe house in the middle of a forest because he opted to live a slow life. There will be enough food to last him for 2 months, and there will be an invisible barrier that will prevent monsters from approaching him. Soon, Ryu wakes up in the house in the middle of the forest, and he immediately heads outside to test out his newfound magic abilities. He then checks out his house that has some frozen meat in a cold room and also an empty bath. There is a knife and 2 beginner-level books on the table that tell him about the monsters and the plants in the area. After that, he heads outside again and experiments with magic, discovering that he can create water just by imagining it, and there is no need to chant any spells. He wants to take a hot bath, but can only create room temperature water, so he decides to start a fire instead. He goes full caveman mode and tries creating fire by rubbing sticks together, but he doesn't have the required skill or strength for that. He gives up, but then he gets an idea to use the sunlight to create fire instead. For that, he decides to create a lens using ice, imagining individual water molecules bonding together as heat is stolen from them, and ultimately succeeds in freezing the water. He then carves the ice into a sphere and uses it as a lens to start a fire. Thanks to that, he can enjoy a hot bath at night, and he realizes that he can create hot water directly if he just applies the principles of modern science to magic. The next day, as he has some dried meat for breakfast, Ryu thinks that he must increase his offensive power because he will need to hunt monsters once he runs out of stored food. He starts by practicing to shoot a water ball at a tree, and even though he can hit his target in the first attempt, it doesn't do any damage. He is not discouraged by that and decides to shoot out a high-pressure water jet because that will have enough power. However, he can't put enough force in the water jet to reach the tree, and it just seems like he is peeing from his hand. Ryu feels like giving up, but then he remembers that the angel told him that the key to using magic is his imagination, and he can get better at it only with regular practice. So Ryu keeps practicing shooting a water jet till he can consistently hit the tree, and at night, he is able to generate hot water directly. The next day, he tries creating ice crystals out of thin air because he has always dreamt of using the Icicle Lance magic spell. However, shooting an icicle is even harder than shooting water, but Ryu keeps practicing it along with his other water magic variations. Days pass, and he becomes more skilled at using water and ice, and one day, he decides to head into the forest to hunt for some food. He explores the beautiful forest and decides to gather some herbs and call it a day, but just then, he notices an angry boar staring at him. Ryu freezes in terror as the boar charges at him, and he barely gets out of its way at the last moment. The boar simply knocks down a tree and Ryu gathers the courage to fight back. He covers the ground in front of the boar with a sheet of ice, making it slip. As the boar slides towards him really fast, Ryu creates multiple sharp icicles pointing towards it at the end of the runway. The boar hits the icicles at full speed and immediately dies after being turned into Swiss cheese. Ryu can't believe that he won, and at night, he checks his book on monsters to find that boars are the weakest kind of monsters. He then notices that even though the book talks about beginner-level monsters, there are 2 special entries at the end. The first one is about dragons, who are powerful enough to burn down entire cities easily, and if one spots them, he should immediately run away. The second page is about demons, who are beings of unknown origin, and the book just tells everyone to pray that they never run into a demon because that means instant game over. Ryu realizes that the world is too big and he needs to get stronger fast. So the next day, he ditches his clothes to go full Tarzan mode and ventures into the forest again. This time, an assassin hawk attacks him and he barely dodges its first attack. The huge bird then sends invisible wind slashes towards him, and Ryu realizes that this monster is way out of his league. He runs away, creating ice blocks behind his back to block the wind slashes, and then shoots water jets at the bird. The assassin hawk dodges everything and then charges towards Ryou at full speed, but he creates an ice wall at the last moment, blocking its attack. The bird loses one of its eyes because of the collision, and it decides to retreat this time, much to Ryou's relief. However, while he was running away from the hawk, Ryou lost his sense of direction. As he tries reaching his house, he suddenly finds a glowing lake with a headless knight standing on the water's surface along with a headless horse. Ryou is stunned to see this, and then the headless knight turns its attention towards him. Luckily, he returns home in one piece and continues exploring the forest after that, fighting stronger monsters and mastering his attack magic. At night, he goes to the lake again, where the headless knight is waiting for him. Ryou could not find anything about headless riders or Dullahans in the book, and he wonders if it is because they are high-level monsters or if they are not considered monsters at all. However, none of that matters because he is here to spar against it. Ryou attacks the headless knight with a sword made of ice, but he can't manage to land a single strike. He keeps taking hits instead, but blocks them all with an ice shield. He eventually gets exhausted and falls on the ground, but the headless knight doesn't attack him because it is actually training him. As he gets up, the headless knight comes towards him, holding a small crystal knife. The knight coats the knife in water and then freezes it, turning it into a sword of ice. It gives the sword to Ryou, who realizes that the headless knight is asking him to master this technique. Soon after that, Ryou runs into the assassin hawk he fought earlier, but this time, it has evolved into a stronger version of itself, but also lost all its rights. The evolved hawk sends wind slashes at Ryou, who creates ice walls to block them instantly. He barely manages to avoid getting hit by the attacks that tear through his shields because they are much stronger than the last time. Ryou is forced to run away, and he can only block the hawk's attacks. The hawk suddenly speeds towards him, and Ryou somehow stops its attack by piling multiple ice shields in front of him. He tries to hit the hawk with icicles, but that doesn't work out either, and then the hawk uses a sonic attack to immediately cancel his ice shields. Ryou realizes that he is in trouble now, but then the hawk shocks him both figuratively and literally by attacking him with a thunderbolt. The monster swoops towards him to finish things, but Ryou manages to pull out his crystal sword and parry its attack. He can even slash away the invisible wind attacks sent by the bird, and when it swoops towards him again, he manages to stab it through the chest. The hawk falls to the ground and Ryou walks towards it, realizing that he just met the monster twice, but they developed a really strong bond. He thanks the hawk for motivating him to grow stronger and then pulls out the sword to let it bleed to death peacefully. Ryou then begins to head home, but then to his surprise, a dragon comes there. He figures that it is going to be his last day in this world, but surprisingly, the dragon starts talking to him through telepathy. The dragon asks him if he saw a black hawk and Ryou panics, thinking that he might have killed the dragon's minion. Luckily, the dragon seems pretty chill about it and even compliments Ryou on his achievement. He then points that the weapon he is carrying is quite rare, because it is the sword of the Fairy King. Ryou can't believe that, and he decides to learn more about the world from the friendly dragon who introduces himself as Lewin. They talk all day, but in the evening, the dragon gets called home, and he tells Ryou that they might meet again someday. On the other hand, the angels. A few weeks later, Ryou starts craving seafood, so he visits the beach, but he is shocked to find a shipwreck there. He quickly finds a man near the ship, and on checking him closely, Ryou finds that he is not alive anymore. Suddenly, he hears a man groaning and his eyes brighten, because this is the first human he has met since coming to this world. The man named Abel has flashbacks of a giant octopus monster attacking his ship during a storm, which caused him to fall into the ocean. But when he opens his eyes, he finds himself in Ryou's house. He realizes that he made it out safely somehow, and immediately starts searching for others. As he leaves the house, he becomes even more confused because he has no idea where this place is. And just then, Ryou approaches him from behind. Abel is shocked because despite being a fairly skilled warrior, he could not sense Ryou coming. He is also shocked by his dressing sense, but decides to be polite and not talk about it at first. Abel introduces himself to Ryou and thanks him for saving his life. Ryou replies that he could only save him, and everyone else was already dead when he found them. Abel tells him not to worry about those guys because they were smugglers, but before he can elaborate, his stomach starts growling. Ryou tells him that they can talk over a meal and leads him inside, where Abel the nosy quickly brings up the topic of his clothes. Ryou tells him that he has no other clothes and no fabric to create new ones, and Abel tells him to just buy some. He immediately stops, thinking that Ryou must be too poor to afford buying clothes. But Ryou lessens his guilt by telling him that there are no people who live in this area besides him. Abel then asks Ryou if he hunts for food, and he affirms. Next, he asks if he uses the knife for that, but Ryou shows off his water magic, saying that he does most of his hunting using magic. Abel is impressed because only half the people in the world can use magic, and he is among the other half that can't. That is surprising news to Ryou because the angel told him that only 20% of people can use magic. Anyway, Abel asks him to take him to the shore because he needs to confirm something. On the way, he tells Ryou to let him take the front lines if they run into any sort of danger. Ryou replies that it is not necessary, but Abel insists because he doesn't want to be the one being saved all the time. Ryou lets him do as